Okay. So I hope, let me share my screen. Let me know if you all can see it.
Yes, we can.
Right? Okay. So, like, I think you might already know the process. A typical SDE interview, uh, has all these process. First, your resume needs to get shortlisted, and then you will have a quick 15-minute call with the recruiter who will like like ask you questions about your past experience and then explain you about the interview process. And further, they'll share the resume with the hiring manager. This is mostly for SD3 and above. For SD2 and below, you might be directly shortlisted for the interview rounds. But for SD3 and above, like, the HM needs to select the profile as well, right? Then comes the online assessment and coding interviews. Coding interviews can happen, like anywhere between two to three rounds. And then system design, can happen for 1 to 2 rounds, out of which one can be LLD and another can be HLD. And then finally you have behavioral interviews. This happens for 1 hour, and then finally the offer discussion, right? So, resume shortlisting. Yeah, like, I'll explain, quick overview in terms of what is expected in each of these rounds, right? So when they look for resume, right, what they are essentially looking at for SD2 and above is, for SD2, there can be domain mismatch. Uh, Let me put it here. For SD2, there can be domain mismatch. Okay. When I say domain, I mean, say the team which is hiring is a payments team, right? Or it can be search related team, or anything related to notifications, or yeah, any other domain, right? So basically these are specific domains which will need domain specific knowledge. Say when we say payments or notifications, you need to understand the technologies under the hood. For example, for payments, you need to understand the compliances associated to it, and then security related features associated to it. So these domain level knowledge, they may not expect a lot for SD2. But if they find some profile which has relevant background, they'll give priority to that profiles, right? But as you grow in career for SD3 and above, they kind of start looking for a strong match in terms of domains, right? They'll seek experts in payments, search, or notifications, whichever the team is right now working on, right? So what I'm essentially like saying is, if you want to switch to product based companies, or high paying companies, it's bit easy at SD1 and 2 level. It gets difficult as you grow in ladder. Because I think if you work for any small product based companies, I think that should still be kind of okay. But say, for example, if you're working in service based companies, things might get very difficult as you become senior software engineer or SD3. Because as I said, they'll seek domain expertise, because the problems the teams will face will be unique to these specific domains. So they cannot hire someone who has no idea about their domain, and then like, expect them to solve problems in these domains, right? So the catch is, if you are aiming to jump to high paying roles, it's bit easier when you try for SD1 and SD2 roles, right? I'll explain you, like, how to create a resume as well, and probably we'll have even resume reviews one on one. Like, I'll give you like enough support in creating a proper resume as well. You don't need to worry about anything. This call is just about overview, what you can expect, because as we conduct sessions, it might take a couple of weeks to cover everything. So I'm just giving you some overview so that if you are actively applying, you can get some of the inputs in the beginning itself, and then start incorporating in your interview process, right? So and then the recruiter phone call. So the most difficult part is resume shortlisting, right? Yeah, this is the most difficult part. Once you cross this, everything else depends on your preparation, right? How you prepared for each of the questions you are going to handle. This is the only uncertain thing that you need to go through. Once you cross this step, then everything depends on your hard work, whatever you have put in, right? But most people never get their resume shortlisted. That is the main pain point that people are facing. So if uh, I mean, even like when I started applying for companies, I rarely got calls, right? I had to revise my resume a lot many times, get it reviewed from my LinkedIn connections and then my college seniors before I started getting resume calls. So the first thing you should be working on is you should revise your resume often and see if you are getting calls for whatever company that you apply. The hit ratio should be at least, like uh, 1 in 30 or 50, right? So every 50 applications you put, you should at least expect one call, or in the worst case 1 in 100, right? If you are not getting this, then your resume has some issues, right? When I say resume, it's not only resume, it also your LinkedIn profile. Because the moment uh, recruiter finds your resume interesting, the very next thing they'll do is they'll open your LinkedIn profile and see how good your profile is, right? So if you have empty profile picture or empty headline and then experience section, no one is going to give a call to you. So make sure your LinkedIn profile is fully complete and your resume has a good impact story points, so that recruiters are interested in your profile, right? So this is about resume. Yeah. And then recruiter phone call. When you get recruiter phone call, main thing you should focus on is you should whatever you say must be in alignment with whatever you have mentioned in resume, right? Say for example, you have put in resume that you are working in a 10 member team and you're leading the team, right? But if recruiter asks you like, do you have any experience leading the team, if you say so, say no. Or if you say you have very little experience over there, then it's going to be a red flag, right? So what essentially I'm saying is, whatever you put on resume, you should have everything on in your fingertip, so that whenever someone calls you back, you are ready to answer them clearly, right? Because this is going to be a short call, 15 minute. If you blabber something, then recruiter is going to lose confidence in you. They are going to like switch to some other profile. So this is very crucial, because recruiter kind of opens the gate to you for other further rounds. So this 15 minutes call is crucial. So the very first question that recruiter is going to do is, can you tell about yourself, right? Can you tell a bit about yourself, right? So for this question, you should ideally be having 2 to 3 minutes intro, right? I mean, essentially, right, for all these rounds, you cannot, be blindly hopeful that you'll deal all the questions like at that moment, right? You need to be prepared as much as possible. So you need to kind of evaluate what all the possible questions that you can expect and prepare answers for this in advance, right? Only then you will be able to kind of get the offer quickly. Otherwise, what you need to do is you need to learn all these through a couple of failures in a matter of months or years, and then like before getting the dream offer, right? So you need to evaluate what all the questions you might be getting in each of these rounds, and be well prepared in advance. So the first question they are going to ask you is, can you tell me a bit about yourself? So you should prepare 2 to 3 minutes of introduction in this aspect, right? What do you do, and what is your team structure, and what is your domain, and what is your interest, why are you looking for this particular job, and why this specific role you have selected. So all these questions you need to jot down and then prepare in advance, right? What do you do, why looking for a switch, why the company name, right? What I mean, mainly what people do is like when they get a recruiter call, they kind of get stuck in answering these simple questions, and then recruiter thinks, okay, this guy hasn't done enough preparation, so he might fail if I allow him to go through the interview process, because each and every interview process takes time of the recruiter in scheduling things as well as the interviewers. So they'll be selective about whom they are allowing to, yeah, whom they are allowing to the on-site rounds, right? So this should be very important. And then coming to the HM review, right? Hiring manager review. So if you have done a good job with your resume, this should be straightforward. There should not be any hurdle. Only drawback I have seen is HMs are very selective about yeah, people's past experience, as in they look for your past switches, right? So this is where most people kind of get rejections because they have frequent job switches. So ideally, like if you have, I mean, in your entire span of career, if you have at least say for example you have 3 years of experience, if you have 6 months at 6 months at every company, then the hiring manager is going to kind of reject your profile, because I mean, they are less confident about your profile. They might think that if I hire this particular person, then I might need to open this role again in a matter of months. So they'll, because anyway they have other options in line, so why to kind of take a risk allowing this person to attend the interview, right? So this is, I mean, this probably not in people's hand, but if you are thinking about switches in your career, you need to be careful about it. Ideally, if you stay at a company for 2 to 3 years, that should be fine. And on a rare scenario, like if you have only like say 1 to 2 6 months plus stints in a span of say 5 to 6 years, that should be fine. But if your resume should at least have like list of experiences having 2 to 3 years stretch, right? Only then they'll get confident that okay, this person probably might have switched within 6 months due to some problem with the company or something, probably mismatch of interest. But I could see that this person stayed 3 years in a single company. If things align, he might stay in the new role as well. So this kind of confidence is what mainly HMs look for. Resume anyway, like if your resume crossed the recruiter, it will cross HM as well, because HMs are the ones who give instructions to recruiter in selecting the profiles, right? So this is about HM review. And when it comes to online assessment, so yeah, so every company, right, every company has association with some partners like HackerRank or yeah, HackerHealth or any other platform, right? So the main thing you need to do is search in lead code discussion, and then get to know like about the platform as well as past questions, right? Prepare them in advance. Here like mostly what people do mistake is like they'll have good lead code profile, they'll think that they can tackle any lead code medium, so they'll just like kind of attempt this online assessment without going through past interview experiences. But often what happens is, due to prime time pressure, or sometimes what happens is some like I mean so sometimes like unluckily you'll get a lead code hard, which if you have gone through the lead code discussion, somebody might have shared their experience, and you would have like gone through that particular question. and then it might have helped you in the online assessment. So every round, right, every round you see here, you need to make sure you are going through the past interview experiences, no matter if you are expert in any of these rounds, right? Even if you are expert in system design or behavioral interviews or coding, it's essential that you go through the past interview experiences, mainly because it takes a lot of effort in getting this one interview call. If, to get another interview call, you might need to apply for 100 other companies, and you will never know when will you get the next interview call. So once you cross this particular hurdle, then everything else, right from online assessment till the behavioral interviews, you should make sure that you cover every other detail that is possible, right? So you don't need to miss out any the information that is available in internet. So you need to make sure you go through the lead code discussion entirely. Prepare a kind of document containing all the past questions that is asked. Prepare thoroughly as you prepare for board exams in 12th standard or 10th standard, right? And then same goes for coding interviews. But the difference between online assessment and coding interviews is, in online assessment you are doing this alone. No one is there to watch you. But in coding interviews, they'll watch how you approach the problem, right? So here, say you have seen the problem before, right? If you simply kind of start writing the code, no one is going to bother, right? But in coding interview, there are a couple of things, a couple of signals that interviewers look for, right? They'll see if you are asking the requirements clarifications, right? Because essentially, I'll tell you the reason. We have these coding interviews and system design interviews. Basically, they are like checking how you will deal real world software engineering problems, right? So when someone gives you a feature, as a developer, you need to make sure you got the requirements right, because people have their own assumptions. Your PM's product manager will have some assumptions, and then your hiring manager will have some assumption. So if you don't clarify and then get alignment in terms of what the requirement is, then obviously after 2 to 3 months of implementation, there will be question from your PM and then your HM, saying like, okay, I was thinking you are going to implement this feature, but looks like you haven't implemented it, right? That is a waste of time, waste of resource, right? So essentially, they are basically using this opportunity to evaluate how you generally deal any given problem, right? So if you know a certain algorithm, that is secondary, that is baseline. So getting to know DFS or BFS or Dijkstra's is a baseline that they have. It's a fundamental requirement that they have. But through these coding interviews, they are not actually checking your algorithmic knowledge or coding knowledge. That is baseline. Say it covers, yeah, coding proficiency, algorithm knowledge covers 30%, I would say, right? So rest 30%, rest 70% is all about communication, right? How do you navigate ambiguity? Say like I say an integer, right? So I mean, say for example, in a problem, I just say there is an integer k, right? Are you simply assuming that this will be positive, right? Assuming this is positive, or are you taking care if it is a zero, or if it can be a negative, right? Do you clarify all these things? If I say it's an array, do you ask if it can contain duplicates? Can it be empty, right? Can it all be zeros, right? So you need to have all these clarifications. This is, I mean, this might be this might look like a very difficult thing in the beginning, but it is very simple. I'll tell you the tricks through which you can ask this couple of questions, right? This is a bit simple, you don't need to worry about it. It's just that you need to keep in mind that communication is important, right? So basically, say you are providing a service, right? Some customer comes to you and then ask for some service, right? You need to better understand what they are looking for before providing the service. suppose if your service is a time consuming thing, you start the service, and after a couple of months the person tells that you never satisfied their requirement, then it will be a loss for both you and your consumer, right? It's your responsibility to kind of make the customer understand what your service can do, and you need to understand what they are looking for. If there is a mismatch, then there is no point in continuing the business, right? So communication is very important when it comes to interviews, right? You need to understand what the interviewer is actually looking for, and then uh, you know clarify everything, uh, remove assumptions, right? Don't assume anything, right? Everything needs to be written in the screen. So you need to ask every possible question to the interviewer, and write down everything in the screen, right? One possible analogy I can tell you is in lead code, right? In lead code you could see that they clearly give you what this variable value can be. They'll clearly tell you the range of it. Can it be 0? Can it be negative? Can it be more than 10 power 5? All these constraints they like give it in your advance, right? So that you can identify the time algorithmic time complexity. But you cannot expect the same in real interview. Real interview, they'll simply post a theoretical statement. You need to solve for that. So basically it's your responsibility to arrive at the constraints of the problem, right? You can arrive at the constraints only if you ask provoking questions to the interviewer, right? So this is only about yeah requirements clarification. Then comes your test cases. This is really important in FANG interviews. If you are applying for any like mid-level product companies, probably you can skip this, but in FANG interviews you need to have test cases. Also within FANG interviews it differs based on company as well. For example, Meta looks for quick coding, speed coding, so you cannot spend more time in test cases. But for Google, this test cases is very important, right? They want to kind of evaluate how you are thinking, like what is your test case thinking and all, right? So you need to make sure you take a simple example and then run through the problem, right? Basically removing assumption is the first step. Clarifying the requirement is also the first step. Then what you are essentially doing is you are taking a simple problem and explaining the interviewer what you understood in the problem through an example. This is to make sure you are again removing any misunderstandings that you have, right? When you go through this sample test case, interviewer will get confirmation that candidate understood the problem, right? Suppose if he finds any gaps, he will correct you then and there itself. Otherwise what will happen, you will complete the coding, you will tell the interviewer you are done, then they'll come and tell you, okay, what happens if this particular k contains every element as 0. So these sort of test cases you need to arrive it in before. So test cases has two parts. One is the simple test case walkthrough, and then covering at least at least 2 to 3 happy paths, which is positive cases, and then edge cases. Edge cases, what if this becomes empty or negative, right? So all these cases you need to handle. But I mean, when I mention edge cases, obviously you cannot come up with all real world edge cases at that moment. The thing is aiming to cover as much as possible. You can have a mental framework saying, okay, if I have mentioned 2 to 3 happy paths and then 1 to 2 edge cases, then it should be good. So you don't need to kind of spend a lot of time in identifying each and every possible edge cases. This has weightage only if you have solved the problem. If you haven't solved the problem, but if you have only listed down the edge cases, it doesn't matter, right? So you need to move on to the algorithm quickly. So I'll say simply cover the straightforward edge cases like empty case and then the nil pointer cases, and then move towards the solutioning, right? Solutioning is where you explain what algorithm you use, and then yeah, possibly pseudocode. When I say pseudocode, this is really important when it comes to Google and other FANG interviews, except Meta, I would say. Meta, I think they expect you to quickly implement the problem and then go ahead. So other than that, pseudocode is important. If you are confident that you can straight away convert the solution to code, you can go ahead. But it's always advisable to convert the solution to pseudocode so that you will have clear cut instructions before your screen, which you can convert to code easily. If you are thinking about the solution in mind and then typing the code, it becomes difficult. But if you have formulated the pseudocode in your screen and you are simply converting those English sentences into code, it becomes easy, right? Because you are reducing the mental bandwidth in thinking and then writing code parallelly. So you just need to offload that mental hurdle. You need to write the solution in the pseudocode format. Then you can blindly convert this pseudocode into Java or Python code, whatever you're comfortable with, right? So this is the third step. Algorithm will become easy if you have solved enough number of problems, because end of the day, once you discuss the problem clearly, right, what are the variables involved? Yeah, variables involved, result expected, right? Most often, say 80% of the time, it will naturally come to your mind, okay, this problem will need this particular algorithm, right? 80% of the time, solution will click, you will find automatically if you have solved 300 to 500 LC problems, right? Because I mean, when I say 300 to 500 LC problems, this means that it will have all the patterns covered. When I say pattern, you have yeah, graphs, and then within graphs you have DFS, BFS, and then you have Dijkstra's, DSU, right? And then couple of more are there, but yeah, and then you have DP, and then string manipulation, permutation, combination. So when you discuss the problem clearly, right, during the problem exploration phase itself, you will find the solution, right? So this is how people save time. So the very thing is, like as I mentioned, 300 500 is not a strict number. Some people find their way within 200 problems. It differs from person to person, right? 300 to 500 is a ballpark number, so you might get it very quickly as well, right? So essentially what I'm telling is, once you complete the problem exploration, that is removing assumptions and then exploring the test cases, right, the solutioning should become like very easily to you if you have solved enough number of LC problems, right? uh, I'll probably, if you haven't, I mean, I'm assuming you guys must have already started solving lead code problems, at least say 100 to 150 problems. If not, I'll tell you how to solve LC problems and how to build this intuition as well. Don't need to worry, right? Yeah, but the idea is solutioning should become very easy, kind of a very second nature 80% of the time, if you have solved enough number of lead code problems. For those 20%, right, 20% you should solve it based on first principles, right? You need to understand, suppose if you have that problem for yourself in real world, how you will solve it, right? You need to forget about everything you have learned at that particular moment. You need to kind of think from first principles. If they mentioned array, you need to think, okay, I have this group of numbers. if they look for some result can be any integer, or it can be another array. If it is another array, what they are looking for is some transformation, right? If they are looking for integer, they are looking for some computation, right? So I mean, again, this computation is again going to be some mathematical thing, and then transformation is going to be some manipulation of the array. So forget about programming, forget about computer logic. If you are doing it in paper and pen, how you will approach this problem, right? You need to solve in hand first, right? If you complete this, evaluate time complexity, right? If it is in O of n or O of n log n, then it means that you have arrived at the efficient solution. You can start converting it to pseudocode and then the actual code, right? So essentially what I'm suggesting is 80% of the time uh, you should go in autopilot mode, right? So because you have very little time, I think most of the interviews happen 40 to 45 minutes. Only like mid-level product companies have it for 1 hour, but Google and all, they have only for 40 to 45 minutes. So they, I mean, ideally you should be solving two mediums or one hard. So 80% of the time you need to be on autopilot mode. So once you have discussed the problem thoroughly, the logic should click on your mind immediately, right? That's where ideally, you want to be in. For 20% of the time, yeah, this can happen like on your unlucky day. So on those days you need to rely on your first principles, solve it as if you're solving on paper and pen, and then try to convert it into pseudocode and then the actual code, right? But even for this case, uh, problem exploration, removing assumptions, asking clarifications, as well as test cases part, these are compulsory, right? Now you have completed the code. Most people, what they do is they simply tell the interviewer that, okay, I have done, I have implemented the code, right? You should not do this. That's a red flag, right? Telling done after completing code. In some cases you will have the option to execute the code, right? You cannot execute the code as well. What you need to do is you need to dry run the code, right? You need to dry run the code with a simple test case. This test case can be the original simple test case that you have taken uh, to explain the problem to the interviewer, right? You need to dry run the code line by line, line by line. When I say line by line, this is important because you can dry run the code line by line only if your code is simple. Say you have written, say 30 to 40 lines of code, you are not, you are not going to dry run the code, because once you cross the 10th or 15th line, you are going to run out of time, right? So you need to make sure what whenever you write code, it should be simple enough within 10 to 15 lines, right? Your function should not be more than 10 to 15 lines, or say at max uh, 25 to 30 lines. What I'm essentially saying is, whatever code you're writing should be some pre-existing algorithm or any standard data structure, right? So you're not inventing anything new during the interview. So you need to have good hand on existing algorithms and data structures, so that you can implement in very few lines, that too, bug free, right? If your algorithm implementation itself is having bug, if your data structure implementation is going to have some bugs, you are going to face hard time fixing those bugs, instead of solving for test cases for the mentioned problem, right? So basically you need to make sure you practice a lot on implementing the common algorithms and data structures, so that you can write the code bug free within a matter of 5 to 10 minutes, right? Writing code should not take you more time. Like even a complex algorithm, should be implemented within 10 minutes. 10 minutes is a good enough time to implement code. Only then, right? Say you are in Google interview, right? You get 40 minutes for coding, for solving the problem, because the first 2 to 3 minutes goes on introduction, and then the final few minutes goes on closing the interview. In 40 minutes, ideally you might be solving 2 problems, right? Some people might get 3 problems as well, right? So for each of the problem, you need to ask clarification, right? Remove assumptions, test cases, pseudocode, and then finally code, and then dry run. That's it, right? Finally, you should again check for edge cases. That is a different thing. So what I'm essentially saying is, if you can reduce the time somewhere in all these 6 to 7 steps, it's only the coding part, right? Because if you practice well, you can write almost any given algorithm or data structure in a matter of 5 to 10 minutes, right? If you can reduce as much time as possible in this particular coding stage, you can utilize the rest of the time for clarification, removing assumptions, test cases, and then the dry run and edge cases. The most trivial part is coding and pseudocode. The most untrivial part is the first 3 steps, right? Dry run is a mechanical process, as in you have already the code, you are simply going to dry run the code, go through the code one by one, line by line, and then probably edge cases will also become simple when you have completed the dry run, because you will find yourself where and all your code is having the problem. What if suppose this particular input comes as empty? So all these things you can cover it a bit easily. So what I'm saying is, off of your problem, not off, but 75% of your problem solving is about the first 4 steps, right? Clarification, and then removing assumptions, test cases, solutioning. This is about algorithm, data structure, finding, right? This, as I mentioned, if you have solved enough number of problems, 80% of the time you should be in autopilot mode. So this again makes the first 3 steps crucial. So if you can, most of your time should be on the first 3 steps. For the rest, you should be on autopilot mode, right? And then, I think this is what I wanted to cover on the coding thing. I'll give you a separate list of algorithms and data structures that you need to be on a fingertip. You can prepare accordingly, right? So I can mention the coding preparation into 3 phases. One is covering fundamentals, the DS algo, including implementation, and then building intuition on patterns. For this, you need to solve 200 to 300 LC problems of all categories. And then the third step is forcing your mind into the above framework. This is the framework, right? Because lead code, right? In lead code, you get the criterias, you get the all possible values for variables, and everything is given neatly, right? It kind of makes things easy for you. You don't think much before writing the code, and then you don't actually spend time on solutioning and pseudocode when you attend lead code contests, right? So when you attend lead code contests, your mind is on the timer. You want to solve the problems quickly, so you jump into coding. So that won't help in your real fang like interviews. So that's where most people fail. They prepare well for fundamentals, and then they build intuition, but when they go for actual interview, they jump into coding, missing the above given steps. Then interviewer marks the profile as rejected, right? Because I'll give you this information. So when we say coding interviews, there are two kind of interviews. One is structured interviews and then unstructured interviews. Most of the companies, the mid-level product companies, have unstructured interviews. If you solve the problem, then you are done, you have solved the round. But Fang and other top big tech companies have structured interviews. When I say structured interviews, they have a checklist in hand, right? So they have a checklist in hand. They need to check most of the boxes. Did the candidate resolve confusions or assumptions? Did the candidate come up with test cases, identified edge cases, bug free code, right? If at all bug found, did they identify it on their own? And then dry run. Finally, is the code clean? And then the algo is most efficient one. So they have all these checklists, right? They need to check. If they check all these boxes, then you'll be given strong hire. If you check only most of the if you miss one or two of these things, probably you'll be given higher or lean hire. Suppose if you don't cut most of these check boxes, you'll be given lean no hire or no hire, right? So this is how they evaluate. This nobody tells you. This is some insider information, right? This is not publicly available, but this is how generally the big tech companies evaluate. So if you are targeting big tech companies, you need to make sure you follow this standard framework, right? And then there goes on system design interview. Even for system design interview for HLD, they have specific checklist like this. You need to check all those boxes. For other mid-level product companies, there is no such checklist. If they feel that that one hour went well, they'll simply shortlist you, right? But for high-paying big tech companies, you need to make sure you check most of these boxes, right? Similarly goes for LLD as well. For behavioral interviews, there are some standard questions that are there in internet. Also, you can look out for Amazon leadership principles, and then frame one story each for each principle, right? I think Amazon leadership principles are good enough resource. I think they have some 20 plus leadership principles. You don't need to focus on everything, but you can focus on problem solving in terms of uh, toughest problem you have solved. What do you do in case there is a conflict between you and a colleague or manager? And then any customer problem you have solved beyond your work scope, right? And then how do you handle multiple conflicting work priorities, right? And then I think these four things you can focus on, right? Mostly, like, what people do is they have some 4 to 5 concrete stories, and then reuse for all the behavioral questions. Say you have a project that involved cross team collaboration. You must have dealt with other team members. Then there might be obvious conflict. You can use that story. That particular project might have some exclusive problem that you have you had come up with some solution. You can use it for problem solving, and then it essentially solves the customer problem. You can use that story for this particular question as well. But what you need essentially need to make sure is you must not share the same story for all the questions in that 1 hour interview. Then what they'll think is, okay, this guy hasn't done a lot of work in their current company. This will be their assumption. So you need to make sure you should have at least 4 to 5 stories explained in that 1 hour interview, right? This should be different stories. There will be, yeah, if you are applying for SD2 or SD3 and above, there will be follow-ups. Who are the stakeholders and what exactly was the environment, and what is the exact problem you have solved. So there will be follow-ups. You need to be prepared in advance for all these things, right? And then yeah, so I have given you some quick overview of all specific things. Yeah, system design I didn't cover much because it needs to have their own have its own template. I'll cover the template when we start the system design sessions, right? First we will focus on coding, and then we'll go ahead with system design. But in case if I find that you people already have covered most of the things in coding, we will straight away jump into system design discussions, right? For behavioral interview, you can keep these inputs in mind, and then go through the Amazon leadership principles, prepare stories for like these 4 main problem areas, right? And then yeah, so as I okay, one thing I wanted to mention is, yeah, so even if you prepare for all these, right, it essentially will take couple of failures before you get that first offer, because these are all standard inputs applicable for everyone. But there might be like individual specific problems that each person will go through. So you'll obviously need some time, couple of failures before you get the first offer, right? Yeah, for resume, I have prepared some sample yeah bullet points that you can do. This Jake's resume, right? This is a very good popular resume that you can make use of. I'll post this in the Telegram channel as well, right? You can follow this standard format. You need to make it as a single page resume. Make sure you're not using any different colors and things. Black and white should be enough. And then the uh, resume should be a single column resume. And then these are all standard instructions. You need to make sure you are not throwing in buzzwords. If someone asks you anything about it, you should be able to explain the story similar to what we have discussed for a behavioral interview, right? And then these should, I mean, when you mention a sentence in your resume, it should look like this. Say for example, you are working on tenant deployment, configuration deployment solution, which allows different application teams to deploy the configuration changes, right? Then you can mention the end output as how much percentage of the time deployment time is reduced by this effort, right? Reduced tenant deployment time by 50% by automating tenant application configuration through a reusable workflow. This is how you can write. How you should not write is created a configuration management system that automates tenant configuration deployment. Because if you say automates, what is the end result to the business? That needs to be covered in the resume bullet points. This is very important for SDE2. This is even important for SDE3, but I'll tell you how it differs for SDE3. Anyway, like you guys are still applying for SDE2, but in case in future, right? So SD2 and SD3 both needs to quantify the impact, but for SD3, the impact should be more in terms of a cross team business impact instead of a single team impact, right? The same thing I have rephrased in SD3 terms. You can read this. Designed a self-serving tenant configuration platform for application teams adopted by 10 plus teams, cutting overall tenant deployment from time from 4 weeks to 1.5 weeks. So same problem, same solution, but the approach differs, right? SDE2 worked on the actual implementation of the solution, and then reduce the deployment time by 50%. But for SD3, they have designed this particular solution, made it self-serving so that the other teams can use it themselves, right? This is adopted by 10 different teams. This quantifies the impact this particular SD3 had, right? And then cutting overall tenant deployment time from 4 weeks to 1.5 weeks. This is huge win in terms of business, right? When some new customer comes in, you are able to deploy the tenant within 1.5 weeks, which was about 4 weeks in the past. So this is how you should quantify when it comes to SD3 resume, right? And then like otherwise, one more point is for SD3, each of your verb should be kind of led, designed, solutioned in similar terms, and not like implemented and more SDE2 specific words. You understand the difference, right? Reducing some manual effort is okay, but designing, leading, and solutioning the system is a bit different. So you should understand how SD3 will talk, and how SD2 will talk, and then modify your resume bullet points accordingly. Yep, I think these are all standard things you might have already aware of. So you need to get good hand on one programming language at least. I would suggest Java, mainly because you can reuse the same for LLD, machine coding, and whatever is needed. Python, some companies don't prefer Python. They want you to have good hand on one compiler based languages, right? So Python is an interpreted language. And then yeah, Golang is also okay. C++ will be useful for CP and DSA, but it will be very challenging for LLD when you want to implement some design patterns and everything, right? uh, Yep. I mean, this particular list, I'll probably have another session when we start the coding things, right? I'll give you a proper list in terms of what all the data structures you need to, make sure you have it in a fingertip, and how you should approach any given lead code problem, so you can build the intuition from first principles, right? I'll also prepare the framework documentation for system design, also the behavioral interviews, and then share it in the upcoming sessions. So this is what I'm planning. So my plan is, I need to first measure or gauge where you people are right now in terms of the using this framework for your problem solving, and then probably cover some gaps if there are, and then go towards system design, both LLD and HLD. For LLD, what I'm planning to do is I'll cover all the design patterns, behavioral, and then creational, and then behavioral creational. I think there is one more pattern, I forgot it. So yeah, behavioral pattern, creational pattern, and then structural pattern. Yeah, so I'll cover all these design patterns, and then we'll cover few problems as well, like parking lot and things, right? We'll also discuss how we can go about machine coding. If you are given 1 to 2 hours of time and asked to implement end to end, how to go about it, how to plan the solution and implement it, right? This is for LLD and machine coding. For HLD, as I mentioned, you need to have a framework, adopt the framework for every given problem, and then go through some 10 to 15 real world use cases. I'll cover in deep in terms of what and all needs to be covered in HLD interview, and then any follow up questions how you can handle. But yeah, these are all the overall plan that I have. But for this particular overview session, if you have any questions, you can ask. I'll stop sharing the screen.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for the wonderful session. Actually, I wasn't expecting this type of session from a random Reddit user. Thanks for that. my question is nice that we were actually discussing about the fan companies and how to crack those interviews. Uh, but uh, but I was actually looking for I was not really looking for a fan company to get into Amazon, Microsoft, or some fan company. But I was just looking for a high paying company who can hire me. Uh, so every company would really follow this process, or do they really ask some framework level questions like, in my case, right? I'm actually a Java guy. We use Spring in day to day work. So should I actually expect those type of questions instead of all these framework questions?
I'll tell you. So you cannot really differentiate FANG and high-paying companies, right? Because end of the day, it's not about the nature of company; it's about the competition you have. If you say someone is paying huge, then obviously there will be like thousands of people applying. The end of the day, they need to kind of like remove the competition. So if they have only 10 roles and then there are 500 plus people applying, then the expectation increases, right? So it will obviously match a fang standard, probably not exactly but almost similar. Probably they won't give more detail into like dry run and all. Probably they'll be okay if you kind of complete the implementation, but those requirement clarification and test cases and all, right? Those are standard things which not only helps the company but will also help you
Okay.
solve the problem quickly. So the requirement clarification and other things, right? It's not only for useful for the from the company perspective, but it also useful for the candidate as well, right? Because that's how you
Yep.
like nail down the problem in real world, right? So I would say you don't need to kind of restrict yourself by saying that okay, I don't want to target a fang, I just need a high paying company. Because in real world you cannot really differentiate high paying companies from fang companies, right?
I
Because
got you. I got you. Yeah.
so also to answer your second question, like language specific questions and framework specific questions are very rare in big tech companies. They'll focus mostly on the standard pattern coding interviews, system design interviews, and then the behavioral interviews. Some companies might have language specific questions, like I think Apple does ask Java specific questions in for the Java developer roles. But as a standard, high paying companies don't give a thought about programming languages that you are working on. For example, in my career I have worked on C++, Python, Golang, and then Java. So programming language doesn't matter when it comes to big tech companies.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. Okay.
But like I mean, all I just want is like how strongly you need to make that switch. That is where it all lies in, because as I mentioned, you need to work on solving 200 to 300 different LC problems, right? What is your LC count, if I may ask?
It is actually 50.
Okay.
It was 1 year back, but yeah, right now the count is 50. Yes.
Okay. So yeah, like if you want a high paying role, right? I would suggest spend your free time, like put in your hard work in whatever free time that you have. Because as I mentioned, it's easy if you want to switch at SD1 or SD2 level. As you grow in ladder, they'll start expecting domain level expertise. Then it will become difficult for you.
Okay. I got you. So the problem which I am actually facing currently is I have to actually go to office every day, and I mean, this sounds silly, but I am actually not in, cannot actually code. I mean, spend time on this. So that is the main problem that I'm actually facing. But I can actually pull these weekends. I mean, the Saturday and the Sunday. But if I only spend Saturday and Sunday on lead code or on these problems, I think it might also go beyond 6 months or 8 months.
Okay, like I think yeah, I mean we can kind of dive into discussions if there are any technical challenges that you are facing. But yeah,
Okay.
I understand that different people will might have some personal
Sure.
priorities as well. I highly respect that. Yeah.
Okay.
Kaushik, do you have any questions?
No questions. I'm good.
Cool. Okay, guys. Thank you for joining on a Saturday. I kind of appreciate your involvement in this. Yeah, based on your interest, we'll continue other sessions as well. Yep. Thank you for joining. That's all for today.
Yeah, thanks for the session.
Yep. Bye bye.